I was having a conversation with my friends and I was talking about how The Legend of Zelda is a combat series, and we argued about it because we were talking about like how Zelda shouldn't relate to Dark Souls and Ninja Gaiden. And the more I thought about it, the more I wonder, is Zelda a combat series? And the answer to that question I would say is yes. Ever since the first Zelda game on back on the NES, there's an emphasis on combat in Zelda games. And in this video, I'd like to talk a little bit about the history of Zelda combat and why I think it is definitely a key part of the Zelda series. So, with the Zelda series, it is known as an action adventure game. So, it has mostly puzzles and adventure, but most notably, the action part of the Zelda series is known for the game's combat system. These Zelda games use typically sword and shield combat, as it can be in a top-down perspective or in a 3D perspective, such as Ocarina of Time and A Link to the Past. And with the Zelda series, they use the combat as less of an emphasis depending on the Zelda game, but for little puzzles and enemy encounters, and especially bosses. So some of the most notable ones I can think of is Zelda 2, which is a 2D action RPG, and it's inspired by games like Xanadu and Ys 3. You can see how that game has an emphasis on one-to-one combat, especially with the Dark Nuts and the bosses, and that is one of the starts of combat in the Zelda series, along with the first Zelda, as it has a top-down perspective in line with something like the Tower of Jiraga, which also uses action combat. And as the Zelda series progresses, they do have the combat be in different ways, such as the spin attack being introduced in A Link to the Past, along with the jump move in Link's Awakening with the feather. And these are used for bosses and even side-scrolling sections to emphasize combat, but especially starting with Ocarina of Time is when Zelda truly evolves into a combat series, as this is the third-person camera and the lock-on system that you see in a lot of modern games such as Dark Souls and Shadow of the Colossus. And you can see how they create different enemy encounters to use the combat, such as the Dark Nut and the Shadow Link fight, and that truly begins the 3D era of combat for Zelda. And you can see in the future Zelda games, such as Majora's Mask, have more combat with the different mass abilities you do, and especially with Wind Waker, which has the little instant dodge where you press the QTE to do a little swipe attack in a more seamless combat that flows together pretty well. You can see already that Zelda's combat is well known in the series, and they're emphasizing it, and that rolls into Twilight Princess, where it has horse combat, and it goes back to the roots of what Ocarina of Time was doing after the lukewarm receptions and sales that was Wind Waker in the West. So that's pretty cool. And then you can see, especially with the 3D Zelda games, such as Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, that they truly have a combat system with the parry system, the dodge, the weapon breaking, and much more. And you're able to break apart this combat system and use the physics engine for a lot of cool things. And it really hones in what Zelda is as a combat series. And that's not even talking about the Zelda Muso games or Hyrule Warriors, which are action games in the Dynasty Warriors. And those are fully action games. You can see how Zelda is going into this combat, doing hordes of enemies and combos and Muso attacks, and it really shows that Zelda definitely is a combat series. And it makes me wonder what is next for the Zelda series. Is it Dark Souls? I hope not. I think for the next Zelda game, they're going to need a combat designer or director, because these recent Zelda games combat are not the best, and I hope that with the future Zelda games, they can kind of have a combat system that's a little bit more engaging than having a basic parry and a basic dodge and a basic instant jump and much more. That makes Zelda a little bit more stand out. But the thing is, I don't think they see Zelda as a combat series, Nintendo, and fans, they just have it there just because it's an action adventure game. So what is next for Zelda? Maybe it's a good game, maybe it's a bad game, but they should definitely emphasize the combat more and see if they can make something a little bit more unique than what we have currently. And whatever it may be, I definitely look forward to seeing what combat in the future Zelda can be, along with what it can influence in the gaming industry. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.